Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you may be across the country. And my name is Josh Clark, and it's my privilege to welcome you to the Josh S. Clark Overcomers podcast, where we are interviewing an overcomer, an amazing American hero who's overcoming every single day. As you learn the story, you'll know what we mean by that. It's a daily battle. But for those of you, just a little backdrop with our first episode of this. This began out of last year. We had two Overcomers online virtual conferences where we heard from overcomers. And in a year where the message is as needed or more needed than ever before, that we are more than overcomers through Christ who loves us. And that while we go through tragedies and hardships and challenges and sometimes unspeakable, unimaginable things, we can, by the grace of God, overcome. And hearing the stories of others who are overcoming every day by day, hour by hour, brings hope to us and encouragement that we too can overcome. So out of that conference has birthed this Overcomers podcast, and what I hope will be a monthly series. And the first person I asked, I'm so grateful she said yes, and that is the American hero that we have with us today and longtime friend of our family, Sue Peney. Sue, thank you so much for agreeing to be with me today and to share your story.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. And excuse me. I would never be able to say no to you or anyone in the Clark family. But yeah, the thing is, in overcoming mine is just overcoming grief, but living life. That's where I'm at. My son was killed in action in June 1st of 2010, and my life changed drastically from there on out. Of course, in reference to the notification, because I had been in.
How about, Sue, we'll pause just for a moment on that because I've got a video teed up for you
okay.
that you wanted me to play.
Sure.
But just a little background. Chelsea and I had the privilege of meeting Sue over a decade ago at the ING Marathon Expo. Sue, I think that was back in 2008. Is that right?
Yes.
About then, okay. And Sue was there looking at an amputation, and that's another story that we won't really go into today, but she's an overcomer in many different ways. And that day we learned, the very first day we met her, that she was overcoming incredible
mobility,
accident, right?
Yeah, a head-on vehicular accident that the engine came up to my knees and crushed both of my feet. And at this time, I still have no ankle bones in my right foot at all. And my tibia sits on 2 surgical screws. So, and the doctors couldn't believe that I was even walking. That's where I got the nickname of the Miracle Lady. And I praise God every day for that, And that's one of the things in reference to when this accident happened. I could see it was out on a country road, and I gripped the steering wheel and I said, God help. And crunch. Jonathan, my son, was sitting in the front seat. At that time, there was no laws about front or back seats. And he slid underneath the dashboard. And like I said, the engine came up to my knees. And it took them 45 minutes to get out. And one of the things that God had blessed me with was I saw a lady in the back seat of the car. And she says, I'm going to put this cloth over your son because they're going to break the window. Now, I did not know what a prayer cloth was at that time. And this was a beautiful, brilliant white with gold strands going through it. And she placed it over my son. And I could see her. And then I could see a man's hands on my shoulders. And well, my son began cussing, and I didn't even know he knew these words. And I said, stop and start praising God. And he did. And when he did that, the man behind me began to sing the most beautiful song. And we were rescued out of the car. Months later, I'm thinking that it's these 2 people that are the witnesses. And they said, how did you get out of the car? Well, those were angels. Those were angels that came down and helped get us out. and heal, because Jonathan had to learn how to walk, talk, everything, and the same with me. So that's just one of the blessings that God has laid on my heart.
Wow, that's amazing. And that's not even, that's not even the focus of the interview today. And yet, so many incredible stories, and that led to your son, him being the hero that he's been. And we're going to get into that in a moment. So that's where we got to meet her. She was there to look into prosthetics for possible amputation.
That and also something that I could take that was not pain medication. I wanted something natural. I wanted something whole foods.
So she came by, for those of you who may not know what I do, she came by our booth, and so that's how we met. And a customer who ended up becoming a very dear friend. And little did we know what the next years would avail. But as you'll learn here soon, a couple of years later, she lost her only son. And I had the I guess the privilege to help, to just be a little part of honoring his life. And today we're going to do that even more so. But we got to honor him at the Georgia State Capitol, and passed a resolution honoring his life and his impact. And today we're continuing that, but we're also honoring my friend Sue, because I want you to hear how she overcomes daily, and through not giving it all away right now, but I'll just say this: serving. She has such a servant's heart, as you're going to learn, and she's going to take you through some of these grief-stricken days and how all that transpired. But her story: grab a pen, grab paper, grab some, definitely most importantly, grab some tissues.
Yes.
Because it's going to get very real.
Yeah.
So Sue, anything you want to say before we play the video? Sue, by the way, has given me permission to just start from that moment, one of the worst days of her life, and then we're going to go backwards and then forwards. Sue, should I go ahead and play the video, or?
Please go ahead and play it.
Okay. Let me.
It's not long, but it'll impact you.
Here we go.
As the casket of Sergeant Jonathan Peney makes its way down the steps of Cathedral St. John the Baptist, nearby hundreds salute a man they've never even met, yet show the deepest gratitude for his bravery overseas.
It's the least we can do to show our respect to fallen soldiers.
James Bayous is one of many spectators proudly standing in honor of Peney with American flag in hand.
They give so much for us, for our freedom, for our way of life.
A 21-gun salute rings out on Lafayette Square for the fallen Ranger. His body is then placed into a horse-drawn carriage.
I miss you, brother. I love you.
Robert Way and Peney went through medic training together. He and fellow Rangers describe Peney as someone who'd do anything for anybody.
Most people have someone they know they can always call on. Someone day and night will always be there. And for all of us who knew John, that was that guy.
During the emotional farewell, Peney makes one final stop to Kevin Barry's on River Street, a place known as a popular Ranger hangout.
The owner is very respectful of Rangers, goes out of his way as much as he possibly can to help us out and do everything he can.
Army Ranger Scott Gilbertson also knew Peney personally.
He always cared about everyone, loved his wife.
Along with his wife Kristen, the fallen Ranger leaves behind his mother, Sue Peney.
Prayers and our thoughts are with the family and with all the military.
And Bayous, along with all those who showed up to send this brave soldier the ultimate farewell, he wants those fighting to defend our country to always remember.
We support them. We want them to know that.
In Savannah, Nikki Gaskins, WJCL, Fox 28, thecoastalsource.com.
Oh, hang on, let me stop this. Oh. Whoops, I stopped it actually before the end, didn't I? Did I stop it before the end?
It was perfect.
Okay. Well, Sue, please take us back to that day for a moment, and what transpired.
You never expect your child to be killed. You never expect the unexpected. And Jonathan was raised to protect and serve his God and country. And on June 1st of 2010, a car pulled up in front of my house and they knocked on the door, but I had boxes up against the door, couldn't see who it was. So I ran through the house and went into the, excuse me, off the deck into the yard. And I saw the two uniformed officers coming. One was in dress blues, one was in camo. And you knew then that they were going to be giving you a notification that you didn't want to hear. They said, the casualty officer says that, do you, are you Jonathan Peney's mother? And I said, no. And I screamed it, I didn't say it. And then he took a step towards me and he says, the President of the United States, we regret to inform you. And with that, that's my boy, that's smiley face there. And with that, I punched the casualty officer in the nose. I was screaming at him. I'm not proud to say that I was cussing, but I was. And then they had the casualty officer grabbing a big bear hug. And that is when I began beating on his chest. They then began to go down a checklist. And the one thing that I remember seeing and hearing is that, are you the secondary next of kin? And I said, no, I'm his mom. Don't ever call me that. And with that, the skies opened up. I wouldn't allow him in the house. So we sat on the porch in the front and got soaked. And I handed my cell phone to the casualty officer and I said, just start calling. And they were asking me all types of questions. And your mind is not where it's supposed to be when somebody tells you that your son is dead. Your son will be coming back, but it's going to take about 2 weeks before you're going to be able to touch him or see him. And not knowing if he was even going to be presentable. But praise God, he looked like he was sleeping in the casket, and I was able to, at visitation, I was able to run my hand through his hair, because I always liked to do that as a kid, but he would never allow me as he got bigger. And as you're going through this journey, I look back and I have met so many people that I would never, ever have met. So many people love Jonathan. Jonathan was caring and compassionate. He was goofy. He was a kid. He joined right after he graduated from homeschooling. And so I had to give permission for him to enlist. So when he went to whatever it's called to get his job, I knew he was into computers. And so then I thought he would be coming back. Oh, he'll be sitting behind a desk. But he came back and he says, no, Mom, I want to be a medic. I went, whoa. So, and at that time, I did not know that a medic most of the time doesn't carry any firearm. He's there to serve. The day that he was killed was one of the worst firefights that was going on in Afghanistan. They had been at it for 48 hours. His best friend was on the rooftop and somebody had shot him and he was bleeding out, and they called medic. And he ran up the ladder. He got to the top of the ladder when a sniper got him. They tried to save John, and the man, his best friend who was bleeding out, said, treat John first, we'll work on me later. The senior officer that ran up after Jonathan, I only found out last year he was shot when he was trying to render help. So that what a lot of people, and again, this doesn't happen overnight, is that a lot of people doesn't understand is that these young men and women who are out in I call it the sandbox, they see daily things that are only horror movies. And we need to cover them in prayer every day, every minute of every day. They saw my son blown away. There's 3 other of his friends within arm's reach of him. Um, when I go to a lot of the meetings and stuff for Families of the Fallen, sometimes I have to bite my tongue because a lot of the Gold Star family people say, well, the Army should do this and the Army should do that and whatever branches. And I said, when's the last time did you reach out to your son or daughter's best friend in his unit or her unit? You know, even if you just pick up the phone or if you send them a text message and say, hey, thinking of you, you know, they have seen more in their young life than most of us could even comprehend. And that's why I consider this a blessing. I miss my boy. He was my only child. And my sister died on May 26th. Oops. May 26th. And then June 1st is when Jonathan died. But from there, it's been a journey. There's nothing that can prepare you for the shock factor of, like they say, it's the knock on the door.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sue, let me ask you this: can you take us back for just a moment to days when Jonathan was still with us as a young boy? And I've got a few pictures of him as well, and you know, my hat's off to you as a single mother that raised him entirely on your own, and he turned out.
The Holy Spirit was there. Let me tell you.
Turned out to be an amazing man. I've got a few pictures to share as you tell us, but take us back a little bit. What was it that formed him into the warrior and the compassionate warrior that he was, a brave warrior that he was? But take us back to being a boy. When did the seeds first get planted?
I believe through Grandpa. Grandpa was in the Army, and then we always would search for patriotic parades, would visit air bases and military bases. Even, I mean, he was still in diapers. We would make fried chicken or turkeys and stuff, and then bundle it all up and take it to the soldiers who were serving. Now, at that time, it was the Cuban crisis. So we in Florida were right a takeoff area for it. And also my parents would, that's little one there. He was a roly-poly. And that is my sister and Jonathan and her dog, and they're all angels now. The 2 of them loved each other. Like I said, on May 26th, my sister passed. June 1st, Jonathan passed.
So it hit all at once.
Yes. And then they tell you, the notification team tells you can go to Dover. I didn't know what Dover was. You know, the only Dover I knew was in England. And I says, I don't have a passport. How am I going to get to England? Dover in the United States is where they bring all the remains of every military who has died. And it takes 14 days. And what I did not understand was they call it the dignified transfer case. And it is aluminum, and it's a lot, not very deep, but the body is packed in ice, and then the body is in a plastic body bag. And one of the young men who came with Jonathan escorted Jonathan, and they carried the flag from Afghanistan to Dover and to Savannah, where he was we had the service. He's now an angel too. So when I'm looking at these videos, I'm seeing the different Rangers who are no longer with us, but still stand for America, still stand for our flag. And excuse me. So Jonathan got an early age in reference to what it was to be served. And he had a very kind heart. He would always share. And then as he got older, as a teenager, I always told him, I says, give, even though you may not have anything, give. And it will come back to you tenfold. And so I can remember this one time we were at the gas station up in Buckhead, and there was this elderly couple in a beat up old truck, and it was obvious they were having some distress. And so Jonathan just walked over on his own and took the fuel thing and filled the tank up, and then he reached in his pocket and handed him all the cash that he had. And then when he came back to the car and he looked at me and he says, "Mom, they need it more than we do." And he says, it'll, remember you always said it'll come back tenfold, and it did. And one of the things also is in reference to being outdoors. He loved to rock climb, and he loved, of all things, he loved his wife, Kristen.
Oops, sorry.
That one there, if you zoom in on that, you can see his face or profile. That is Jonathan. That's not just a soldier. One of the things in reference to being an U.S. Army Ranger and being with the Ranger Regiment battalions is that it's top secret. So you don't know where they're going. So as Jonathan was being trained, if I didn't hear from him, no, this was before he was married, if I didn't hear from him in 6 weeks, I got in my car and drove down to Fort Benning and went and knocked on the commander's door and said, I need to know where my boy's at. And of course, he says, "Okay, ma'am." He says, "You'll hear from him shortly." Well, before I could get off base, my phone was ringing, and all I could hear was Jonathan saying, "Mom, never do that again." Yeah, so that's one of the things, and we always like to do to hand out little flags on different veterans holidays. And when he was getting his wings for airborne, they have the drop zone there, and I took the American flag off of the house, huge flag, and nobody told me I couldn't do it, so I walked out on the drop zone, and I'm out there waving this huge flag, and they were just dropping like right in front of me and then running. But they all look alike in their uniforms, and so he ran right by me. He didn't want to acknowledge that I was his mom, because he told me later, he says, "I was told, and everybody was told on the airplane, do you see that big American flag? Drop in front of her." And he says, "Oh my gosh, I know it's my mom." So he inherited his patriotism from his crazy mom. But it still brings tears to me to hear the national anthem, to hear "God Bless America," and when they are playing Reveille, it's something, because I live near Fort Benning, and on a clear day you can hear all of this. On a clear day you can hear the live tank maneuvers, and it's what we like to call the sounds of freedom. So as the earth is waking up, our soldiers are waking up also, so that they can protect us. So that's how he got that, and just a sheer blessing from God that he was a good boy. He wasn't into drinking or anything, and people are probably saying, "Yeah, but he must have done it later." I don't know, because I told him ground rules. I said, "There's zero tolerance for drugs, zero tolerance until you're of age if you want to have a beer," or something like that. He of course could have had whatever, because as I tell my Ranger boys, I said, "Y'all are crazy," because you have to remember their adrenaline is going, and then they're brought back because they're like 4 months deployed, but not just lollygolly deployed. They're on missions, and then they're back for 6 months, and then they're 4 months again, and that's rotated. So the U.S. Army Rangers has been since 9/11 an active unit protecting us, and that's whoops. That's where I get my patriotism, or even I'm known as Ma Penny, and that's the best thing I love is when one of the boys calls me, and all I hear is, "Hey Ma, what are you doing?" And it just brings back the life into my soul, and I'm very thankful for that, and praise God for everything that he's blessed me with.
Yes. Well, Sue, let's can we talk about the days after the tragedy, and how did you handle it? And take us
Not
to
well.
the lowest point. Yeah.
the first 2 years, you're busy with ceremonies and honors, and you're all over the place. You know, I must have put 200,000 miles on my car. Whenever there was, in 2010, there was 12 Rangers killed in action from June 1st to December 31st. And I tried to go to every funeral, no matter where they were. And that's was a blessing for me. That was a healing for me. But you know, the fourth, fifth year came back to my house, and I just went into deep depression. I couldn't go back into the house. I slept in my car in my backyard. I was on an acre and a half, and or half an acre, and I slept with my dad's machete. I don't know if y'all know what a machete is, but it's a long, sharp knife. It looks like it could do some damage. And one day I was in the backyard, and the weeds had grown up in one section of the yard. And so I started chopping them down and screaming as if they were the Taliban. And my neighbors called the police, and the police came, and he was so kind. He says, Miss Penny, can I help you? Can I help you kill the Taliban? And I handed him the machete, and he proceeded to chop down the rest of it. And then after that, that law enforcement officer would stop by my house either for coffee or just, you know, pop his head in and say, how you doing? You know, things like that. And I ended up losing my house because I just wasn't thinking. I used to work for a Fortune 500 company. I was making good money, but this just threw me for a loop. The foggy brain, you know. And so then, you know, it's a matter of another military family opened its doors, and I lived with them for 6 months, and they were traveled a lot, and they were both chefs besides being in the military. They were lieutenant colonel and colonel. And so it gave me time to heal, because the one thing that people must realize is that do not be afraid to talk about the fallen. Do not be afraid to say their name. It took me a year from the day of notification to the Mother's Day of there's a picture of me sitting on, or a little boy sitting on my lap. It's Mother's Day, and that was the first time in a year that I was able to say the name Jonathan. So it's a healing process. I've been blessed that, you know, I've been asked to walk out on sport events with the generals and all. And I looked over at this one general, and this general says to me, how can you do this? How can you do this? That's the picture. That's little JJ, or Jonathan Jeffrey Heileman. And I'm at their house using everything. That's another story in itself. But
so this is the young, you're talking about, this is the young man named after your son, whose name is Jonathan. And you said it took a few years of healing to get to the point just to
be able to say Jonathan.
Say Jonathan.
Wow. And a lot of people don't understand that, but that's just the way grief goes.
Yeah.
And so then it's the matter of when you're walking out in this field in the middle of a stadium with this 4-star general, and he looks over at you, and you see a tear going down the side of his face, and I said, what, you know, talk outside of my mouth, what's going on? And he goes, I don't know how you do this. And I said, the reason that I do it is because I got a big hole in my heart. And every time I do something for others, I said, there's a patch that goes on my heart. And I says, and the day that the Lord calls me back home, my heart will be healed. I says, but until then, you know, this is why I reach out. I sat on Facebook, Zoom meetings, suicide calls from the spouses of military, spouses of law enforcement, and have a team that can respond. suicide is big in the military and law enforcement. That's a lot of people don't understand when I share with them that I'm in a win-win situation. I'm 73 and I've got some health issues. But when I say win-win situation, that means to me that, if the Lord's going to take me tomorrow, I'm ready. I don't want to really go, but I'm ready. But a lot of the people who are not believers will say, well, you're suicidal. You just keep your faith going. Don't listen to naysayers. And that's some of the things I've done. When I lived in Louisville, Kentucky, to keep my spirits up, I used to walk on the river walk down there, and there was a lot of homeless veterans. And I would crawl underneath the bridge and I'd sit there and talk to them. And I had 2 Marines that I could call, my boys, and they were 55. And I'd say, okay, I says, I need you here. What time can you get here? I says, because he needs to talk to another veteran. And so they would come, they would pick them up. They would take them either to their place or they would take them to the like a hospitality house that's in Louisville, and clean clothes, let them sleep, feed them, and then offer them counseling. But the main thing though too is that what I've found is that most of these people are not healthy, and for them to start knowing that someone cares, whether it's for 5 minutes or whether it's forever, just to be caring. And you don't know. It took a long time for me to realize this. You really can't judge a book by its cover, because like if you walk through Atlanta airport for COVID, there was lots and lots of soldiers and all there. And I remember this one young man, and I walked by him and his eyes were just blank. So you don't know if he is going to a deployment and he's scared silly, or he's been deployed and he's seen too much. And just a human touch, walk by somebody, they're sitting down, touch the shoulder and say, God bless you. Have a great day. Even though your day may be sucky, good wishes onto others. That's it's part of the journey. It's part of life.
Sue, that's incredible advice for all of us, I believe, is just encouragement. And you're not just offering advice, you're sharing your story, which provides insight for us on how to deal with grief and how to deal with the challenges of life. Because as you've shared with me on many occasions, as you just shared today, you never know who you're going to encounter, whether it's a soldier or whether it's anyone. Our hearts go out for the soldiers. We know, we can imagine, we know that they're putting their life on the line for our country and our freedom, but we don't know what, as you said, anyone may be dealing with at any point in time. And I think about your example. Ever since I've known you, I think about Jesus said, I cannot be served, but to serve. And,
you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I shared this with you a while back, that your story reminds me of Viktor Frankl. And I think it kind of puts a little bit of the lessons from your life and your dealing with grief into, kind of a 3-step process, if I may share it that way, as Viktor Frankl, who was a noted psychologist who was lost his family, was killed by the Nazi. He was thrown in a concentration camp. He endured unbelievable, torture. Yes. And he had developed this therapeutic therapy before concentration camps for losing his family and all that. And all of a sudden it was put to the test. And the 3, if you will, tenets of that is, number 1, being involved in a purpose or cause that's greater than ourselves. And he said, it could be anything. And when you tell your story about how, and you told me this actually in a discussion a while back, you said, Josh, it's not about what is the one thing, it's about do whatever is in front of you to do to serve, to make other people's life. Can you touch on that?
Yes, it's do not hesitate. It's the one thing, and do not fear. So one thing that God has showed me is that if I'm giving from my heart and my soul, um, God will bless not only me, but whomever I'm ministering to. I cannot quote you any scripture. Um, I read the Bible, but the Lord has not allowed my brain cells to absorb it. But that is one of the things, is to spend time feeding your spirit, spend time with devotionals, um, put praise music on when you're cleaning the house, be able to be joyous, invite people that you may not know, your neighbors, over and say, we're going to have a little prayer meeting. And some of the people say, oh, I'm not interested in that. I said, oh, that's okay. I'll pray for you, you know. And most of my Ranger boys know that excuse me, that I'm a prayer warrior. I'm a tough character. Sometimes I'm not filtered, and I just love them. I love to be able to walk down the street, which I've done in the past, and I'll see an Army uniform, and I'll tap them on the shoulder and say, "Hey, I need a Ranger hug." And the human touch is awesome. But please, again, in reference to what you can do for others or be a servant, is that it doesn't take a lot. It just takes your heart to be filled. And don't expect thank yous. That's one of the things that I do in reference to getting through this journey is, um, I share my story with the casualty officer training classes at Fort Benning. And because they watched this Hollywood movie that is Hollywood. And I tell them, I said, okay, this is the real thing. And I'll grab the individual by his collar and I said, no, don't hit me back, whisper to him. And I start shaking him and pounding on the chest. And I said, that's what reality is. I said, don't take it personal. And I said, the other is, which I did not know, casualty officers, that's not their regular job. They're assigned that. And so just like in any business, there's good and bad. I fired my casualty officer. He called me on the day of John's funeral as I'm standing in front of the church in Savannah. And he said, am I supposed to be there? Mm-hmm. And I just went, no, you're not needed, So the road is windy and curly, but there's some tunnels that you go through, but there's always the light at the end of the tunnel. There's always God watching over you. And I have been so blessed in reference to having visits. I mean, I was driving to Atlanta one day and there's this pickup truck and he was cutting me off. And I looked over and it looked like my son and freaked me out. And so I had to pull over, and because I was getting ready to scream at him, and then to see full face, I thought, it's John's twin. Could have been John's angel there, but basically John would always tell me, you're a crazy driver. I said, in Atlanta, you gotta be. But, just simple things like that in your life, appreciate. Don't be, oh, poor me. You will find that if you reach out, no matter what level, to people, going through, like if you go through a fast food place, like sometimes I do, but I'm being really good and I haven't done it in a while, but I'll get a bunch of breakfast sandwiches. And then I know where the homeless is here in Columbus, and I'll drive through the area. And as I give that out, we have prayer, whether it's just a short prayer, but I'm not looking for acknowledgement. I'm looking to say, this is feeding their body, but more so the human touch is feeding their soul.
Yes. Wow.
And so that's where I'm at.
Well, Sue, I want to get into the second tenet in a moment of Viktor Frankl's logotherapy, which I've seen just displayed in your life, as I said a moment ago. Before I go to the second point, though, I think maybe you could quickly share with us. You were talking about just, I love the point, just do anything, do whatever's in front of you to do. And by the way, when I was studying Viktor Frankl, that was his point. He said too often it's like we worry about what is the one thing. What is the one purpose? We might even travel the world trying to find it. It's like to do anything that will offer value, to where to wake up every morning, you know that you may feel like you have nothing to offer. You may feel like you're the last person to give. You may feel like you have nothing in the tank to give, but you wake up and you offer something value to someone else's life, and it gives you a reason for continuing. And again, you've already given the great examples. One last example I want to ask you about is I love how you just pulled onto the base. And what did you do with those donuts? And then we'll keep moving along here.
I'm still not sleeping through the night. God wakes me up and just says, pray. And so normally what I do is I would get up and there's this 1940s mom and pop golden donut place. And I'd go there and order 10 boxes, 10 dozen donuts, hot right off the, whatever the assembly line is. I'd pull onto Fort Benning and I'd find the scragglers that are doing their PT. This is not recommended, but I'd go, psst, hey, you want a donut? And yeah, it's a sugar rush for them, but it's a mom thing. But the one time I was out there and all of a sudden this huge spotlight comes on my car and I hear, leave the area. And I went, I don't know where I'm at. And so he sent over a soldier, and this soldier comes over and he says, ma'am, this is a live tank maneuver. We suggest that you leave. And I said, if you can tell me how, I will be glad to. Do you want a donut? And so I gave my last box of donuts to the live tank maneuver people. But
I love how you distracted the drill sergeant, and all of a sudden she looks behind her back, as she's told me the story in the past, and all of a sudden while you're talking with him, they're consuming all the donuts, and that was purposeful on your part.
Yes, it was really early, and I went into headquarters and put the box of donuts, and fresh donuts, that aroma is just like, oh. And in that training, they are food deprived.
Yes.
And captain came around the corner and he says, ma'am, we don't need those. I says, yeah, but you want them. I grabbed him by the arm and I says, come on, let's go for a walk. And it was still dark and the moon was up, and it was right near the first aid station that's named after my son. And so I said, come on, let's walk down there. I says, just walk with me. So he walked, and as I was walking out, the donut boxes just flew. I mean, they were gone in moments. So that makes my heart, smile. It may not be the best for them. And I had told, again, I don't know who are the ranks. I'm terrible with that. I'm just a mom. And I told this story to the commander, and he says, so you're the donut lady. I said, oops.
So y'all, we may not be suggesting that you go show up in the middle of live rounds to deliver donuts, but I think that this picture of that will never leave our mind and will inspire us to go make someone's day a little bit brighter, and in turn help us to also, little do we maybe realize it, but to offer hope and light into our own life. Okay, so we're going to wrap this up shortly, but I do have another question. So the second, as I said, tenet of logotherapy, number one, is to be involved in a purpose and cause that's greater than us. And we're offering, wake up every day is to offer some measure of value to others, to serve them. But the second is to have a redemptive perspective on suffering. And let me quickly say to our listeners, that is in no way to say that somehow some great amount of positive thinking is going to make some tragedy disappear, or someone who's been raped as if it didn't happen. No. But it is to acknowledge that out of terrible tragedy, good can come. Good can come. Not that it was God ever wanted that, not that it does away with it. So, but my question for you is, could you share with us, what good have you seen come out of this terrible tragedy?
Oh, wow. There's so many, so much. Um, I think of a wife of a fallen soldier who spoke at an event at the Fort Benning National Infantry Museum, and she said the saying of, she had a decision whether to run towards the Army or run away from the Army. And she says, I wanted to thank the Gold Star mom for saying that. That was me, and I didn't realize it. But just the tidbit helped this wife and her child get through a day. And that, and just alone in reference to the good of it, is seeing the camaraderie of people who are patriotic, seeing children, teaching children in reference to the national anthem and the flag. There's that is Kevin Barry's, and my son is at the very top on the left with the flag behind him, and the father is Matt Bathauer and his son William Jonathan, and he's teaching him all about all the Rangers that he served with, and especially John, because he's his namesake. That's some of the good that came out of it. Some of the good that comes out of it is just hearing from people that you've never met. There's a gentleman that's in Wisconsin that he walked 66 miles on Memorial Day weekend, carrying a rucksack and carrying Jonathan's photograph that's the size of a placemat on his back. And they go all the way from Wisconsin into the Arlington National Cemetery. There's the Navy Attorney General that came to the funeral and knelt at my feet and said that he was preparing Jonathan to go into the medical field, and he will be missed. But to this day, I can still pick up a phone or text them and say, hey, how you doing? And they respond. Or is there anything I can do for you? And they respond. And so it's just a blessing to be open to whatever God is going to lead you to, in reference to whether it's taking a brand new pair of socks, white tube socks, to a veteran on the hospice wing in the hospital, or if you're going to have an ice cream date at a hospital, and bring 5 gallons of ice cream in the dishes and just serve them ice cream. Some of these soldiers are forgotten. They have no family. They've outlived them. So these things all come back as a blessing, to me, and as it would to anyone.
Wow. And, I think about also, in addition to everything you shared, I think about just knowing the number of kids who have been named after your son. And I think about, again, nothing makes up for the loss of your son and the grief and the pain. But I also think about how through you choosing your attitude every day and to choose to overcome every day, you've been out. It's not easy, yeah. But you've gone out and you served, as you shared, and you've shared his story, and you've done, you've made an impact in his memory and so on. And I think about these kids who are hearing the story of sacrifice and the story of your son, and they're learning your story at the same time. And these kids, who's to say what they're going to do with their life? Who's going to say the impact they could have, the ripple that could go on for generations? It could be the next hero who stands up and saves America. So I'd like to show just a couple pictures of some of these kids. And I think it is a bit of your story, of your redemptive perspective on the suffering. Would you agree?
Yes. Well, that's Jonathan. When we were out at Grandpa's farm.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So that is Jonathan from the back. Okay. I put that picture. So there's he is. And now look at all these other kids now named after him. There's another Jonathan.
Yes, another Jonathan.
Tell us
there
about.
We go. Okay. The one on the far left upper left, is his name is Penny McAdams, and he's a Ranger boy. His daddy was the senior medic team leader. He delivered Penny, and I said to him, "Are you sure you want to name him Penny?" And he goes, "He's a Ranger, son. He can handle it." The little girl in the middle is the only little girl. Her name is Penny, but it's Penney, Caitlin O'Brien. And she was named after Jonathan, also her mom. And my daughter-in-law were good friends, thus making Jonathan good friends. And then the one on the far right is Alex Jonathan. And he's another Ranger son. And he's so smart. He is so smart, so active. He kayaks and hikes in the Pacific Northwest and then in the Carolinas. And then on the bottom left with the red is William Jonathan Bathauer. He's just a blessing. Whenever he can sense when I'm sort of blue, and I'll be over there and he will crawl up in my lap, or he'll come over and, just like my son used to do, fling his arm around me and say, "It's okay, Ma, it's okay." And then the one with the hat on that's Jonathan Jeffrey Heileman. And it's sort of almost scary. He has the same personality as my Jonathan, does a lot of the things. And I just sit there and I'm in awe and saying, "God, wow, thank you." And that's Jonathan, where it says, "I'm blessed." And we used to live in Hollywood, Florida. And our routine was we would go to the beach every morning and then we would have breakfast. There was a little Italian fellow that would cook him breakfast. And then I would take him to work with me. And I was a legal assistant / process server, PI, you name it, they threw it at me. But they actually moved, this law firm made a nursery so that Jonathan could be in that until he got too big. And that's, I could go on forever. I am just so very, very blessed. There's, you don't realize how blessed you are until you actually sit down and listen and learn, and always be ready to give a hand up, not a hand out. It's a learning process.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Sue, for joining us and sharing your journey. And I know it's painful to revisit this, but I pray and hope that it certainly has encouraged me, and it impacts my life and challenges me to go out there and seek to make a contribution daily, and to seek to increase that impact, because it's not about us. It's not about us. We can focus off of us so that we can change this world. And so, the final piece of that logotherapy is developing deep and personal relationships, which he says are best cultivated through serving others. And I've noticed that through this story today, you've already shared that third point, and we can see that true in your life, the personal relationships that you have built that help to sustain you on a daily basis, that would not have been built had you just hit out in your home. And
I've done that too, but the Lord just,
but you didn't stay there.
He just, the Lord just pushed me out, and I'm thankful for that.
Well, we are too. And thank you for sharing those moments when you did too. And think about that police officer you shared that helped you cut down the Taliban in your backyard, the tall grass. And
Yep.
And it just is a great example of somebody else being there for you. It hopefully challenges us to, again, go be there for someone. Is there any final comments that you'd like to, or advice that you want to offer somebody who is maybe struggling to overcome something in their life right now? Or maybe they're going to share this with a friend who is struggling, or,
Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be that was my cornerstone of homelessness, was that I was proud. and didn't want anybody to know. And I got down to, I had $10. And I finally reached out to my family, and my family couldn't believe me because I was so independent. And how did I get in this position? And so don't wait until you're drowning. But even if you are drowning, take a breath, inhale. I always say, inhale the Holy Spirit and exhale all the negatives. And then, ask God to lead you. As I sit in my friend's house here, there's many times, that it works both ways. I can call Gayleen and say, hey, I just need to pray. And like, real short is that, I had some technical issues, and Gayleen set me up on the Zoom meeting and left the house for me to, in every way. It's just never, do not accept fear. Do not accept darkness. Even if you have to put a flashlight on, if you are homeless, reach out to a church. There's so many different programs out there, so many different individuals that want to help you. You've got to stay healthy, and that's one of the first steps. And that's difficult for people who are homeless. And a lot of the people who are homeless, the outside people will say, well, isn't that dangerous? Well, if it is, it is. But, use your common sense and be able to just say, I can help you, or I can point you to help. I never give money out. Normally I have a list of local resources, and I hand them that list and say, you can get shelter there. So just be flexible and get rid of your pride. My pride almost killed me. And so, it's one of the things that I keep on saying is, people will say, well, how can you do that? And I say, well, it's not me. It's God. It's the Holy Spirit. He lights my path. Now, whether I will recognize that path is something else, but you have to take time to feed your soul, whether it's devotion or whether it's you're sitting at the side of the river and you're looking at what God has created, to be saying, wow, he's the master, and accept what he has and listen to when he whispers in your ear. One of the things that I just was vibrating in my head this past week was, I always say, listen to God's whispers. And someone said, well, you know why he whispers? Because he wants you to lean into him. And so lean into God. Let him be your guide. Let him be your center. And if you need anything, Josh has my number. I'll be glad to talk to you. God bless.
Thank you, Sue. Wow, that is a wonderful note to end on. And when you say humble yourself if you need to, and ask for help and share what's going on, that we receive that. And for those of you who don't know Sue, she is a very, very accomplished woman. You can tell that just by the son that she raised as a single mother, but there's so much more to her story also, the businesses that she's built, the things that she's accomplished. I mean, she is a tough, beautiful lady, a beautiful but tough lady. And for her to say that, I think that for anyone who knows you should really receive that well, because I don't know, knowing your life and the stories of your life, I've only known you for over a decade, and looking forward to decades more. But wow, that's great advice. Thank you so much, Sue. On behalf of everyone, I want to encourage people, share this. You never know what someone's going through or what they know someone else is going through. And so your story, those of you listening, you have your own story. And then we have other people's stories, Sue's story, and now we can share that. So feel free to share it. Let Sue know what this meant to you by leaving a comment, and then it will also be available here within a few days on the Josh S. Clark Overcomers podcast. And there's a lot of other episodes there of Be Your Best, but this is a new series that's beginning monthly. So Sue, thanks for being our first. I can't imagine, looking forward to the rest of the stories, but I can't imagine any being more touching than that of yours. This is just such a blessing to all of us. Thank you so much, Sue.
Thanks for the opportunity. Love you guys.
But we love you too. Take care.